Tobari, qu'il est fait wasson, qu'il est fait washi, t'as le fait solo, t'as le fait wade, Maroko Mugo, I want him my bo, ni bibi, we was bibi, checking by solo, kuwaba wa ni bibi, emi ati MAPHORISA wa bi ni bi, babe, ajamati esa auto ni bibi, Tobari.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's mix breakdown time. Today we're going to be doing the mix breakdown for the BANJ newest record, Tobari, featuring DJ OBI and DJ MAPHORISA. Amazing record. I'm going to make it a tradition and always play the rough mix and the finished mix so we can always have the before and after, I guess, if that's what you want to call it. So this is the rough mix essentially.
Checking by solo, kuwaba wa ni bibi, emi ati MAPHORISA wa bi ni bi, babe, ajamati esa auto ni bibi, Tobari,
right, and this is the finished record essentially. Let's start from the top. Why not?
Tobari, qu'il est fait wasson, qu'il est fait washi, t'as le fait solo, t'as le fait wade, Maroko Mugo, I want him my bo, ni bibi, we was bibi, checking by solo, kuwaba wa ni bibi, emi ati MAPHORISA wa bi ni bi, babe, ajamati esa auto ni bibi, Tobari, qu'il est fait wasson, qu'il est fait washi, t'as le fait solo, t'as le fait wade.
Alright, so as usual, I'm going to walk you through my process and hopefully you can pick up one or two things you can use in your own record. I think this video might be very short because we don't have a lot happening here. Most of the work in this record had to do with the vocals. As you can see, we have a lot of vocals. Look at that, stacks and stacks and stacks. But the instrumental, not so much, because technically this song kind of had like a 2-track type beat because we just have 3 stems to work with here. We have the drum stems, right? Bass, and the melodies. And to be fair, these all sound like they were extracted from the original beat. Yeah, if you can hear it. Right, but you have to make things work when you need to make things work. As usual, session organization is a must. So we have the drums, bass, melodies, just in a place where we can see them. And then we have the vocals, we have lead, we have the background vocal. A lot of background vocals, bro. Anyway, so let's walk through what we're doing here. For the drums, like I said before, this is basically an extracted drum from the original beat. Maybe they could not find the data, that's why they did that. But I think this was drums that was extracted, probably with FL or something. You see? You know, because we have a bit of phasing going on there. I did a few things to try to enhance the sound. Let's start with the trim, as usual, gain staging to make sure we have enough headroom. And then I have the Keshoff EQ here to do some EQ, low shelf here as usual to tighten up that low end. And I'm doing some dynamic EQ in here from 5K and up, right? To tame some of those harshness in that shaker. You hear that? And then also I'm doing a boost here. Also a dynamic EQ move, as you can see, to add some snappiness to the snare. Essentially, right? Cool. And this is going straight to where my drum bus, where I'm doing the compression. Technically, I'm not doing a lot of compression here because this is already a beat that had a lot of compression from what we can hear. So as you can see, the needle is barely moving. I'm mainly using this as an amplification tool to get the drums to be loud. I also have it going to my parallel compression bus as well, just to add some more energy to the beat. Let's mute the parallel compression bus and see the difference. So without it, then with it, you know, just a little bit more ginger, if you will. So that's what we're doing there. And then we have the bass. There's this very, very dark low-end bass that's in this song. Not like the typical high octave on my piano log drum sound. The same process, right? We have the gain staging to create headroom. EQ, we're doing that low shelf EQ move as well to tighten that low end. And then this is routed to the bass bus. Like I said, these sounds are already compressed, so I'm not doing much here. I'm just using this as an amplification tool, right? But I'm also doing some saturation here with the BX saturator. I'm saturating the higher bass frequencies. You can hear it. You know, just to add some extra grit. So when you're listening to the song on your phone speakers or laptop speakers, you will still hear the bass because the bass is very, very low. Talking about the octave now. But with this, we're able to get the bass to cut through in the mix a little bit more. We have the melodies. The same process, bro. Gain staging here. Let's see what we're doing with the EQ. Okay, cool. High pass up to 65 Hertz. You know, just to kind of retain this space for the bass. And then I'm doing 1 or 2 dynamic EQ moves here to target some resonant frequencies. You know, simple stuff, right? And as usual, this is also going to my melody bus. But before that, I think there's something here. What's this? Okay, cool. So I'm doing a send to my chorus bus, which has the doubler plugin on there. And the reason I have that aux track, where's it, with the doubler 4, is so that I can add width to any sound that I need to add width to, like with the melodies, right? So if I take off that chorus send, you hear the difference. So without it, right, everything seems to be to the center. And then with it just spreads it out a little bit more, creates space in the center for the bass to sit, especially because we don't have the individual tracks. Do you understand? And also that space is also where our lead is going to sit essentially, you know, which is great.
Tobari, Tobari, qu'il est fait wasson, qu'il est fait waché, ta lo fait soro, ta lo fait wade, waroko mumbo, amote magbo, ni bibi, me wasi bibi.
So that's it for the whole instrumentals. And now we're going to go over to the lead vocals. My process is still the same as usual. I typically like to do most of the vocal processing in the vocal bus, except I need to do something specific to the track, and then I'll do it on the track itself. For this particular lead,
Tobari,
right, this is a rap lead, so we only have a trim plugin here to create headroom, no pitch correction, nothing else. And the rest of the processing is happening on the vocal bus. Still my standard vocal bus. We have the Clarity VX here to capture some noise, but most especially some harsh sound in the higher frequencies from 10K and up, essentially. Yeah.
ta lo fait wade, waroko mumbo.
It's just something that I figured works very well for vocals, in my opinion. I'm sort of using like a DSR, if you will. And then we have the catch-off EQ, where we're doing all of our EQing to target all the resonant frequencies that we feel are present in the vocals. You know?
Tobari,
This is actually a very, very important step to getting a very clean vocal. And as you can see, the Q for each of these EQ points are very, very, very tight. That's to ensure that we are only targeting the resonant frequencies without affecting the quality of the vocals. And then as you can see, this is also a dynamic EQ move. So we are only going to be targeting frequencies that exceed the threshold that we've set for each of these frequency points.
Tobari, Tobari, qu'il est fait wasson, qu'il est fait waché, ta lo fait soro, ta lo fait wade, waroko mumbo, amote magbo.
So it's very, 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 very dope. So I'm going to bypass just this plugin, but the rest of the plugins will still be on so that we can hear the difference that this is making.
Tobari, Tobari, qu'il est fait wasson, qu'il est fait waché, ta lo fait soro.
And then with it,
Tobari, Tobari, qu'il est fait wasson, qu'il est fait waché, ta lo fait soro.
you can hear how much cleaner it sounds. This is a very, very important step. And then the next plugin here is the DSR. I like to just use this to just capture a little bit of sibilance as I progress down the vocal chain.
Tobari, Tobari, qu'il est fait wasson.
Yeah, so you can see that we're doing up to like minus 7 dB of gain reduction here when the S comes in. And typically I like to set the DSR to capture sibilance from 3K and up. It's just how I like to do it. And then what else? We have the SSLE channel strip. This is where I start to shape the tone of the vocal. So that many times for this particular vocal, as you can see, I'm not doing any boost on the high frequencies because the mic that recorded this song with has a lot of highs. I'm doing a cut on the high mid frequencies to reduce some harshness, somewhere around minus 3 dB, around 3K, wide Q. And then the low mid frequencies, I'm doing a cut up to say minus 14 dB, around 750 Hertz, a wider Q as well, not the widest, but you know, wide Q as well. This low mid frequency EQ moves actually helps the vocal to sit properly in the mix. It's magical. And then the low frequency is just typically what I'm using to control the amount of bass that I want in the vocals. All right, let's bypass so we can hear the difference. So without it,
Tobari, Tobari, qu'il est fait wasson, qu'il est fait waché.
then with it.
Tobari, Tobari, qu'il est fait wasson, qu'il est fait waché.
Right. I'm going to play with the music because it's very, very important that when you're doing these steps, you actually listen with the music so you can actually hear how it sits in the music because that's the whole point, right? So without it.
Tobari, Tobari, qu'il est fait wasson, qu'il est fait waché, ta lo fait soro.
And then with it.
Tobari, Tobari, qu'il est fait wasson, qu'il est fait waché, ta lo fait soro, ta lo fait wade, waroko mumbo.
Immediately the vocal is sitting on the beat, it just sounds good. It feels great. Do you understand? This is an amazing plugin. Now the next plugin on the vocal chain is the 1176 compressor. I like to compress in series. Typically I like to use the first compressor to tame picks. And most times I actually like to set the attack to slow mode here to try to get the compressor to act very slowly. But for this song I wanted a bit of a faster attack, so I've set this to 3, what you call it? Is it micro or milliseconds here?
Tobari, Tobari, qu'il est fait wasson, qu'il est fait waché, ta lo fait soro, ta lo fait wade.
Right, but as you can see on this part of the record, the needle is barely moving. Just like I mentioned before, I like to use these compressors as an amplification tool, not just compression. So the times where I'm not doing any compression to the vocals, I'm amplifying the vocals with the output and the input as well to get the vocal that is punchy in the mix. And also this compressor at the end of the day typically serves as input for the LA2A, which is my second compressor in my series compression. It's actually quite cool, but we'll get there. And then the next plugin on the vocal chain is the C6 multiband compressor. This is a very important part of the vocal chain. I'm going to leave a link here so you can watch how to use this from scratch. It's very easy to use. It's very, very dope. As you can see, I'm not doing a lot of boosting with the C6. Typically on the highs, which is around like 10K and up, I would boost this to like maybe 8 dB sometime. But actually I'm doing more compression here.
Tobari,
The threshold is set to -60 there so that I can control the sharpness of the vocal. Like I said, this vocal has a lot of brightness. Do you understand? And this is helping me to keep it smooth. And we're using the frequency range from 1.3 to 9K to control the clarity of the vocals. You should watch the video on how to use the C6. It's actually quite amazing. And one other thing I like to do with the C6 is set the behavior to opto. So it behaves like an opto compressor, which means slow attack, program dependent release, your vocal sounds thicker, yada yada yada, that kind of stuff, right? Let's bypass this so we can actually hear the difference. So without it, right?
Tobari, Tobari, qui le fait waso, qui le fait washi, ta le fait soro, ta le fait wade, waropo mubo.
And then with the C6.
Tobari, Tobari, qui le fait waso, qui le fait washi, ta le fait soro, ta le fait wade, waropo mubo.
You can hear that all the resonant frequencies that escape the SSLE channel strip are being controlled by the C6, which is just great. Hey. Then the next plugin on the chain is the LA2A. This is where I actually do the main compression and amplification for the vocals. As you can see, I'm not doing a lot of compression on this part of the record. I said this part of the record because also we are running other parts of the record through the same compressor. So we might get heavier compression on other parts of the record. Like for example,
she says she wanted to be mine. That my cocoa drives the wine.
So the way I like to do this is target -3 dB with the loudest part of the vocal performance, essentially. And then for the other parts of the vocal performance where there's not a lot of shouting happening, we still have the amplification that we've done with this to bring up the vocals. Do you understand? It almost starts to act like upward compression in a sense. Do you understand what I'm saying? Downward compression up. Anyways, let me not confuse you. But yeah, this is how I like to use this tool. It's quite amazing. You know what? Let's bypass it so we can hear the difference. So without it. Very low, right? And then with it on.
Tobari, Tobari, qui le fait waso, qui le fait washi, ta le fait soro, ta le fait wade.
Amazing. The LA2A compressor really can help you amplify your vocals without any sort of crazy nasty distortion. In fact, you get saturation that is built into the compressor into your vocals. I mean, that's why I don't have saturation on my vocal chain. And as you can see, I do not level match. I think for the first 8 years of my mixing and mastering career, I was level matching a lot. Level matching means you have to mix the whole song in a different way. And for this system that I have successfully developed over the past couple of years, I don't see the need to level match, especially since I discovered upward compression with the MV2. This approach sort of works in that kind of way. We have the peak reduction, which is doing the downward compression, and we have the gain, which is doing the upward compression for when there's no compression happening in the performance. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, this is my method. If you like to level match and you think that works best for your workflow, stick to that. All right, this is just me. This is how I do my shit. Okay. All right, and then the last plugin on the vocal chain before we go into the time-based effect is the SPLDSR. I'm using this to control the sibilance that would have built up due to all the processing we've done, and also to control how hot or warm the overall vocal sound. If I want a hotter vocal, I just reduce the S reduction. Right, you can hear that immediately. And if I want a warmer tone, I just increase the S reduction. Sounds really, really good. And then from there, we move on to the time-based effect. We have the room reverb. I'm using the pure plate reverb for that. Again, this is not supposed to be noticeable. It's something that you're supposed to just feel, serve as a cushioning between the vocal and the beat. And then we have the main reverb, and I'm using the H reverb for that. In my opinion, best reverb for vocals, hence at least lead vocals. And then we have stereo delay, which is feeding my comeback kit. This is also my favorite delay for vocals. We have the delay through bus, which is feeding my delay through aux track, and I have the H delay for that. But I'm also doing a send from the delay through aux track to my very big reverb bus to create a very nice sound with the delay through. Let me show you how that sounds like. I know I did that somewhere.
Said I'm the BANJ. We can do it all day.
Sounds very, very good. Combining the reverb and the delay, in my opinion, gives a very, very nice sound to your delay throw. And if you notice, I'm actually doing the delay throw sent from the lead vocal bus. I realized that this is actually a better way to do it, so you can retain the sound that you've already created with the effects in the lead vocal bus. Before, I used to do this directly from the track itself, but then when you send to the delay throw bus, what you're sending is the vocal without any processing. That might work for some records, right? But I think it's best if you do the delay throw from your vocal bus, because again, you will retain the quality of the vocal that you've already crafted with your vocal bus. You understand what I'm saying? So let's look at the whole song and see if there's any of that funny thing we're doing here that might be exciting. Okay, for the rap vocals, I do have the doubler directly on the background vocal here.
Tobari,
just to spread the vocal before I even hit the background vocal bus. As you can see, there's a lot of tracks. Typically, I like to just pan some hard left, hard right, and then I just walk my way down from there. Sort of create like an upside down pyramid, right? So we have 100, 80, 75, you know, just keep going like that so that every track can have its own space. I don't think there's anything I'm actually doing specifically to these vocals, except down here we do have, what's this? I think this is, okay, this is OB stack.
DJ OB on deck.
Right, so just EQ to control that.
DJ
Sharpness there. And then D-throw as well. You know, this time around I'm doing the delay throw from the track itself, as you can see. You know, just to create that tail.
DJ OB on deck.
It's quite nice. I'm also doing delay throws for some of OB's vocals. I mean, you can see it down here, actually. You can see, yeah, all the delay throws I've done for this record.
That's how we party on a Monday night.
DJ.
You can hear how that delay throw sounds really good with the reverb attached to it. It's actually quite nice. It just helps the delay to sort of melt as the feedback progresses. I don't know if that makes sense, you know. This automation you're looking at right here is for the very big reverb send, and that's for the background vocal bus, right? So I have some parts where I don't have a lot of reverb, and then I have some parts where I have a lot of reverb, and this is how I control it. For example, this is the crowd vocals, right? Right, a lot more reverb, and then this first part of the background vocals, drier, and then this part a little bit more reverb.
We can do it all night.
You know, just to create a dynamic flow across the record. The background vocal bus also has similar processing and plugins like the lead vocal bus. The only thing that I usually would change is the SSL settings, typically around the low frequencies, to make it different from the lead vocals. As usual, the compression will be different, obviously. The C6 settings will also be different. As you can see, I'm only boosting up to 2 dB on the highs and 1 dB on the high mid, let's call it that. That's just the only difference that you would get between the lead and the background vocals. Again, to sort of make it different. But as usual, before I even get to the background vocal bus, remember, I always like to hit the background vocal summing bus so I can do that multiband compression from 3K to 6K to put the background vocals under the lead vocals. Anytime the lead vocal is playing and the background vocal is playing, the lead is always going to be on top. And then the time-based effect for the background vocals is what mainly sets it apart from the lead vocal. The room reverb is still the same, but we have a very big reverb bus, which is feeding our very big reverb aux tracks, because we have 3 of them. One of them has the Valhalla Vintage verb, which is the main reverb sound, and then I'm blending it with the neo verb just a little bit to create the sound that you're hearing. I'm not using the second very big reverb aux track for this beat. As you can see, just turn that down. But the essence of this is to blend effects together sometimes when I feel like I need it. It's not necessary, trust me, you can get to it without doing that, but sometimes it's just fun to play around like that. And then we have the delay send, which is going to the nectar delay. Very nice and easy delay to work with. We have the chorus bus feeding the chorus aux track, again, to add width, you know, to the sound. For example, let's bypass this so we can actually hear the difference. Why not? Without that. And then with that in. Right, it just gives a much more rounded sounding background vocals, essentially. I don't think there's anything else I'm doing specifically to the mix. The rest is just typically gain staging where I need to gain stage and balancing out the whole mix. Another thing to remember is when you do your gain staging, when you're trying to hit -15 to -18 dB to create headroom, you are mostly putting all the tracks on the same level. That's why gain staging is just the first part, because I've had a few people asking me, how about the rest of the mix? Your gain staging process is mainly to ensure that you have headroom to work with and also to have a decent starting point with your levels. You still have to like make your kick as loud as you want it to be, make your snare as loud as you want it to be, make the lead vocal as loud as you want it to be. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that's just it. So let's proceed to the mastering chain real quick and look at what we're doing. The first plugin on the mastering chain is the VU meter, as you can see here.
We can do it all night. But they me like, well, let's do it all right.
The purpose of this is to give me a large visual feedback so I can make sure that I'm not sitting on the red. Because at 0 dB on the VU meter, we have around -6 dB of headroom to work with, which is more than enough headroom to get a decent sounding and loud master. And then we have the zone plugin. Within the ozone, I always have 3 plugins here. Just have the first dynamic EQ to tame any resonant frequencies in the song. So I have the last nitpicking / cleaning process that I do to just make sure that the sound is good. And then we have another EQ here, which I typically just use to do this 1 dB boost around 60 Hz. To just add extra thickness to that low end. Pretty much, right? Not much. And then we have the imager. I love this imager so much, said it many times, because you have the ability to set crossover points, which means you can spread each of the frequency range differently. As you can see on the high frequencies, I'm doing more stereo widening there. On the high mids, not so much. Mids, don't touch that. On the lows, I keep it narrow. Basically squeezing it into mono so that the low end sounds very, very thick. And that's not the only place I do that on the mastering chain, by the way. Let's proceed. And then the next plugin on the mastering chain is the SPL PQ. This is where I shape the tone of the entire record. I'm basically doing a 1 dB boost around 61 Hz and doing a -1 dB cut around 220 Hz.
We can do it all night.
Right? Not doing it to the mid, and I'm doing a 1 dB boost around 2600 Hz, which is 2.6K. Right, and then for the highs on this record, I'm not doing any boost, as you can see, nothing at all. Again, I feel like this song had a lot of very, very sharp elements from the vocals to the beat itself. But I do have the air turn up just a little bit on the black box just to make the highs shine a little bit, but we'll get there. And then the next plugin here is the SPL Ion. This is where I do the final compression for the record to glue the record together. Typically, we're aiming for -1 dB of gain reduction. As you can see,
we can do it all night.
There's an air bass feature that I like on this plugin, but I'm not using it on this record because this song had a lot of bass. And I have my mono maker set to 80 Hz. So everything below 80 Hz is going to be turned to mono before it proceeds down the mastering chain, essentially. Again, slow attack and fast release, that's what you need for mastering compression. And then we have the black box saturator here. This is where I like to do my saturation for the entire record. We have the saturation set to 50%. Pentode is 50%, also going to the triode at 50%. And I've set the mix to 50% as well. Basically doing a parallel processing type thing here. And like I said, I'm using the black box to add a bit of air to the entire record, 22%, a little bit there. And then we have the BX clipper, where I'm clipping the record before I hit the limiter.
I want 2 coconuts. Say now 1 or 2. MAPHORISA, make a call quick.
I like the diode setting on the BX clipper. In my opinion, it sounds warmer, to me at least. And then the next plugin here, which is the final plugin, is our limiter, the new Fangood Elevate. This is my favorite limiter for mastering since my guy Ewoma put me onto this limiter. Very, very amazing limiter.
We can do it all night. But they me like, well, let's do it all right.
So as you can see, we are at -4.6 dB of gain reduction here with this limiter. Typically like to target between -4 to -5 dB of gain reduction. I think at that level, you get the clean and transparent master, you get the loud master, and then you're not necessarily squashing the signal. But also, that's if you have enough headroom to work with in the first place. If your entire mix is already at -2 dB, do you understand? And you run it through all of this processing and you get to your limiter and then you're hitting even -4 dB, the whole song will sound very squashed. Do you understand what I'm saying? You need headroom. I've set the tropic limiting on here so we can have that -0.5 dB tropic, and speed is around 3 milliseconds. So it's sort of like a mid fast attack. But this is so that we can allow some transient to come through. All right, so we're not just squashing our transient. Very, very important for mastering. So that's it. That's what we're doing here. And I think this is giving us around, say,
Mega Man, let's talk. Mini money moon, just phone.
Something's wrong. Wow.
Why me? You did try me. Tell me why me?
Tobari.
So that's giving us around -8.3 dB LUFS. I just need to quickly mention something. I realized that when I soloed the mid-high, when I was demonstrating the bass portion of this mix, I did not turn it back off. So throughout this mix breakdown, you were not actually hearing the bass on the record. Apologies for that. That sucks. But yeah.
She said she wanted to be mine.
But yeah, we do have bass.
Tobari, Tobari, qui les fait wasson, qui les fait washi, t'as le fait soro, t'as le fait wade, marobo mubo, I want my bo, ni bibi.
Wow. I can't make this whole video all over again, so I'm going to have to give you guys this video like this. Hopefully you've learned one or two things that you can use in your own mix as usual, and this is where I'm going to wrap up the video. All right, so that's gonna be for now. I hope you got something from this as usual, and if you did, make sure you leave me a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more exciting things that we might be doing in the future. And if you'd like to buy my vocal preset for Logic Pro, FL Studio, and Pro Tools, as well as mastering presets as well, I'm going to leave a link below to my store where you can get them. And if you want to book my services for mixing and mastering, I'm going to leave a link to the engineers page, or you can hit me up on Instagram at BenMacaulayDB. Also, leave a fire emoji so I know that you watched to the end of this video. And if I see that fire emoji, I'll send you a free vocal preset. All right. Let's get it. So that's going to be for now. I shall see you on the next one. Benny Macaulay out.
Tobari, Tobari, qui les fait wasson, qui les fait washi, t'as le fait soro, t'as le fait wade, marobo mubo, I want my bo, ni bibi, ye wasi bibi, checking by soro ko waba wa ni bibi, emi ati MAPHORISA wa bi ni bi, babe, ademati le sakoto ni bibi. Tobari, Tobari, qui les fait wasson, qui les fait washi, t'as le fait soro, t'as le fait wade, marobo mubo.